Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Living on the Verge podcast, where we talk all things pop culture, reality TV, and food and travel. My name is Virginia, and if you like what you hear, please follow, subscribe, rate, and review, but especially tell a friend. Now let's get started. This week, I'll be covering the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills Season 14 finale, as well as part 1 of the reunion. And I will have my Wellington review for the cooking class that I took down in Temecula. So let's start off with the finale. First and foremost, I thought Erica looked beautiful. The bathing suit looked gorgeous. But did anybody happen to notice the aerial shot right before she jumped into the water? Did anybody see the sharks? That was scary. I would not swim in the Caribbean. I remember when we were in Aruba, there was a net, and they were very adamant about us not going past the net because there were sharks. So Erica is kind of bummed out that she's the only one in the water and invites anybody to join her. Dorit takes her up on it, and they flash back to when PK years ago had dared Dorit to jump into the water off of a boat in exchange for a Birkin. So the question is, would you jump off of a boat in exchange for a Birkin? And to me, that's not even really a question. The answer is absolutely positively yes, unless I knew the waters were infested with sharks, in which case my answer would be no. So the girls are chatting on the boat. We have Garcelle and Bose having a moment. And then we have Jennifer, who walks over to Sutton. We can't forget when we ended the last episode, Sutton had stormed off. And so she's pouting off in the corner, and Jennifer Tilly comes up to try to cheer her up and get her kind of back in with the group, and says, "I'm really kind of astonished at how much the girls don't like you." Oh, damn, Jennifer, here you go again. Tell her how you really feel. There is absolutely no filter for Jennifer Tilly, and I kind of love that about her. So we are going to get around to getting ready for the party. They're having a party for Dorit and Erica's birthday, and it's going to be a dinner. And there's a funny segment where Kathy is doing this crazy regimen with multiple layers of skincare, all the while eating Cheetos somehow. So I don't know, but that's Kathy Hilton, go figure. Anyhow, Tilly reports that there's a glitch in the Matrix and that Sutton is upset and is not going to attend the party. Erica gets a little bit upset and asks for clarification, and Tilly says, or implies at least, that Sutton felt ganged up on and felt like they had all conspired. And that really pissed Erica off, who then calls Dorit into the room and wants to clarify things. And quickly, Jennifer kind of backs down and just says, "Look, I'm just trying to defend my friend and have her back." So they head off to the dinner, and Sutton's not going until the very next scene, where she decides to go because she has a cute outfit. Kyle decides that she wants to have a conversation with her. And I have a question. Do you think it's true? Do you think it's true? Is it the new? Name 'em. Name 'em. Really? I don't know. Sutton to me always seems like she's trying to grab a moment that she could put on a hat or a t-shirt. Kyle agrees to have the conversation later, and Sutton runs into Kathy Hilton, and Sutton says, "I just want to be a Barbie tonight. So can we all just let Sutton be a Barbie? Thank you." Barbie shows up a little later when they're getting ready to sit down, and she's very unhappy that there is no seating chart. And then they go to order. Kathy Hilton tells the server that she would like the mahi-mahi, but that she is used to the kind that is not fishy. Now, in my opinion, that is a rude thing to say. That is implying that, in fact, you think that they're going to serve you old fish because only old fish would be fishy. But I guess it's just another thing that Kathy Hilton can get away with. And until the very next scene, where she shows up in different clothes and basically interrupts the conversation to announce to everybody that the reason she changed her clothes is because she had peed in her pants. Hi, Kathy. Only Kathy can get away with that. Bose is flabbergasted and wants her to shut the hell up. And I thought it was pretty funny. So then things start to go south quickly because they're going to play a game. You know how the games go on these shows. And in this case, they were going to impersonate one another. So Kyle starts off impersonating Jen, and she actually does a pretty good impression of her. But then things quickly start to go south because Dorit and Erica start to do kind of a southern accent, and Sutton takes offense to that and start saying, I don't talk like that. I don't talk like that. And next thing you know, it starts to get pretty volatile. And as perfect timing would have it, and of course, production, in come the birthday cakes for Dorit and Erica, and the staff singing happy birthday. I thought the birthday song was adorable. Second verse was, hope you get some tonight. Hope you get some lovely presents. I thought that was very cute, and I'd love to use it sometime. But I do have a question. Would you want a cake with a photograph transfer of your face on the cake? And if so, would you enjoy slicing said cake and thereby slicing up your face and giving it to people to eat? I don't know. It's just the way my mind thinks. Don't judge me. But that's what I thought in that moment. And the night ends and we move on. Thank goodness it didn't get too crazy. So we move on to the next day, and Bose and Sutton, an unlikely pairing, head out to an outing where they're going to make some sort of a chocolate. And honestly, I thought that Sutton's attitude kind of sucked the entire time. It was pretty apparent that Bose was trying to, lend an olive branch and kind of make friends and be open to Sutton. And Sutton was just acting like a pretentious brat. Anything that was mildly laborious, she was frowning at. And at one point, she even said, where's Avi to do this for me? I did not like it at all. So they do get to talking once they're waiting for their chocolate over the drinks. Meanwhile, Garcelle, Kyle, and Gentilly decide to head out to the beach. And I have to say, when you are rich enough to have vacation jewelry, that's just fabulous. Okay. Garcelle, to me, was really impacted by Sutton choosing Kyle, and she still hadn't quite gotten over it. And it was kind of apparent in what was going on. But the girls are talking, they're just enjoying their time. And I thought it was really interesting when Jennifer Tilly starts to tell the story about how her ex-husband wanted to offer her half of the bank account, which would have been $350,000 because there was $700,000 in the account at the time. But someone told her to get a lawyer. And then she was asked if she did better by having done that. And she said, well, I got half of the Simpsons money. You think I buy all these diamonds on Chucky money? Chucky money barely covers the snacks. Oh, Jen, priceless. Remember the thirst trap photos I spoke about in an earlier episode? Well, Jennifer Tilly is talking about it to the girls at the beach, and she mentions that she finally figured out what Instagram likes, and that she is nearing 100,000 likes because it's nipples that Instagram likes. I went back and looked for said photo, and as of a couple of days ago, it was nowhere near 100,000 likes. It was at 24,900. Sorry, Miss Tilly, I think you exaggerated a little bit for the television. So now we're getting ready for Carnival, and Kathy Hilton says there's a lot of thongs going on, lots of tushy. She's not wrong, but the outfits did not disappoint. Now, except for Sutton's. Sorry, Sutton, but I think that production or costume makers or whoever had any say kind of did you dirty and could have done something a little bit more flattering for you. And I hate to say it, but it looked like Kyle had something funky going on. I later found out that she had a wardrobe malfunction in that I guess her whole outfit didn't show up, so she had to kind of improvise, and it kind of showed. But when I tell you that Bose's body is amazing and Erica and Dorit looked gorgeous, listen, they all looked very nice and the colors were just beautiful. So they end up moving from the table where they were all, feather to feather trying to have dinner. And eventually they head out to dance the night away at Carnival. And that's the end of the episode where we get, the end of season postscript. So Bose and Keely are doing great. They're working on a natural childbirth for now. Sutton has not really mended fences with Dorit, but she's doing better with Reba, so that's good news. Garcelle is focused on being a grandma to her new granddaughter, Valley. And Kyle and Mauricio seem to be at a stalemate about what to do in their marriage. Dorit and PK don't seem to be anywhere near a reconciliation and, in fact, seem to be headed for divorce. And that's the end of it until Bravo does what they've been doing lately, and they flash to 1 month later where we're going to get a follow-up. The follow-up starts off with Garcelle playing with OJ and Oliver's there, and then they go over to Sutton, who's cleaning up roadkill in the backyard with Avi, and then they show Kyle going to visit Erica, and it is because the verdict for Tom Girardi's trial had just been announced, and he had in fact been found guilty on, I believe, 4 counts of embezzlement and wire fraud. Erica states at one point he's facing 80 years, and I don't even think he has 80 days. We all know that Tom Girardi is currently at a facility suffering from late stage dementia, and I've said it before, he and Erica are in fact still married. She's facing all kinds of stuff. If you look at the news and current events, she's dealing with some lawsuits, and she said it herself. She's not out of the woods. So in case you were wondering, this is the Windjammer in Saint Lucia, and I looked it up. Rooms for a 4-night stay run anywhere from $2,800 to $4,000, not including the airfare. Good news is it is an all-inclusive resort, so that covers all your food and alcohol, and that would be for a 4-night stay, which is what I believe they stayed for. That's the traveler in me, just wanting to keep you up to speed in case you wanted to relive the RHOBH season finale. I would not. However, I might want to go see Carnival because that looked like a lot of fun. So there you have it. That episode ends, and let's move right on along to my review of the Wellington class at Kitchen Fantasy in Temecula, California. It is the class that I went to with my nephew, Joe. He is an aspiring chef who really has an interest in cooking and a natural talent for beautiful plating. So I thought it would be fun, given that he's about to be 18 years old, to give him an early birthday gift and spend some time with him doing something that'll hopefully interest him. I think it's something that he could be good at, and I thought maybe he just needs a conduit to help him, and I'm happy to be that for him. So off we go to the class. It's a Tuesday, I believe, and the class was to run from 6 to 8:30 p.m. A little more on that later. We're given a handout that explains the recipes, and I meet Chef Andre, who is going to be teaching the class, and his assistant, Chef Danielle. So Chef Andre, literally best vibe, cool, nice, personable young man. I really was happy. I got the impression right away that we were going to have an interactive class and not just be taught to. So that really put me at ease. Something to remember if you're taking a class there, you are welcome to bring a bottle of wine. There were a couple of couples who did that. So another thing that you might want to bear in mind is if you are taking a class, you also get 10% off of everything that they sell in the store on the day of the class only. So the class is $79 per person, and in this class we were going to be making a beef tenderloin Wellington stuffed with mushrooms and a handmade pate with a Madeira wine sauce in a puff pastry, and also a vegetable Wellington loaded with artichoke, black truffle oil, hearts of palm, bell pepper, spinach, tomato, mushroom, pate covered with a cheese bechamel Mornay using a puff pastry. When we first got to the class, Chef was furiously searing portions of tenderloin that looked to be wrapped in something that was not butcher's twine. I later found out that they are silicone rubber bands that are reusable and can withstand heat up to 500 degrees. They were pretty nifty. They do sell them there at Kitchen Fantasy. And the reason that he was searing the meat off is to lock in the juices, obviously. But the reason we got to see him do that is because he was running a little bit behind. And normally that would have been part of the prep and it would have been done before we arrived. So the good part was that we were able to ask questions. Once he seared all of the beef portions off, he slathered them with Dijon mustard and put them in the refrigerator because they were still warm, obviously, and you want them to be at least at room temperature, if not chilled, so that they don't mess up the puff pastry when you go to put it all together. So he moves on to make the sauce, which is going to be a Madeira wine sauce. And he starts off with the basic mirepoix, carrots, celery, and onion. And one of the things that I learned is that if you are trying to build flavors while making a sauce, you should build your flavors in steps. And you want to reduce your sauce in steps. So for example, if you have 3 cups of Madeira wine, you want to add 1 cup of wine, reduce it a little bit, and then add another, reduce it a little bit more, maybe add some of your beef stock, reduce it, and so on and so forth. He passed around a little cup at various stages in the cook, and you could smell the difference in the aroma and the richness of the sauce as it continued to mature. So the sauce is simmering and he turns the class over to Chef Danielle, who is going to teach us how to make the other sauce, which is a bechamel sauce that is going to be used for the vegetable Wellington. So Chef Danielle had a little different approach, a little bit harder to hear, and I wasn't really able to follow her because she seemed to be more focused on cooking rather than teaching, but that's just my opinion. The sauce looked really good to begin with. To be completely honest, by the end of the class, the sauce had not done so well. It had gotten very thick and coagulated, but we'll get into that a little bit later when we discuss the vegetable Wellington. There was a mushroom duxelle that Chef Andre had prepared for the beef Wellington, and that was also coming to room temperature. And at that point, he introduced to us the pate that we would be using, as well as the pancetta. And those are a couple of the things that aren't really mentioned in the handout. So if I had one critique about the handout, it would be that it needs to be updated because it doesn't necessarily line up with some of the things that were taught at the class. And although I know that chefs are given certain license to change things a little bit, in this case, it kind of makes it a little confusing if you're going to try to replicate that at home. So that's just my humble opinion. And chef moves on, starts to prepare the puff pastry that he is going to give us so that we could get on to the hands-on portion of the class. So we all get up and wash our hands, and we are then given our puff pastry, and the duxelle is passed around as well as the pate. We are each given our portion of filet, and we are layering it. Everybody did it kind of their own way, but he suggested doing the duxelle, then the pancetta, maybe the pate, and then adding your filet and wrapping it all up so you could turn it around and it would have a beautiful presentation. He even gave us little cutouts so that we could make hearts or stars and be able to differentiate our Wellington from the other students in the class. So Wellingtons go in the oven and we were at a crossroads. Chef announces at this point in time that the class is running behind. He hopes to get us out in the next 30 minutes. I looked at my watch and it was 8:30. So I didn't know it at the time, but the class was supposed to be over by then. I got a chance to interview Chef Andre later, and I talked to him a little bit about this, and he explained that the glitch in the system, if you will, was the fact that he did not get the prep done in time. He really wished that his assistant would have been able to come in a little earlier so that they would have been able to get the shopping and the prep done. And he invited me to come back to another Wellington class where he ensures me that things run a lot more smoothly. And all of that to say, I really appreciated his honesty, and I was really impressed by his professionalism, because if I had not interviewed him and if I had not been to more than a few classes, I would not really have known that there was something going on until the very, very end, and I'll explain why when we get there. All of that to say, we moved back to the vegetables. So some of the vegetables that were used in the Wellington were a little bit different than the ones on the handout. For example, there was no spinach used, and that's okay. I don't think it missed it. And I guess if I had another thing that I would comment about the vegetables, was the cut on them was kind of rough, and on some of the smaller vegetables, the cut was kind of small. So for example, the artichoke really overpowered the heart of palm, and it was still good, but I could see where, having been done a little bit differently, it would have had a much bigger impact. And I don't know if it was missed, but I did not taste any black truffle oil at all. So at this point, given that we were running behind, Chef gave us the option to stay a little later and make our own vegetable Wellington, or he would quickly put them all together for us, bake them off, and we can either stay and eat there or take them to go. The class opted for him to make them for us, and so while he was chatting with us, he quickly put them together and threw them in the oven. When he asked me the next day for my opinion of what could have gone differently in the class, my only suggestion was that it might have been a good idea to announce to the class that given that things were running behind, he would go ahead and prepare the vegetable Wellingtons for us, but would give us to take home and bake. And the reason for that was because I thought he could have packed the sauce separately and then we could have baked it the next morning. It was really late. I think I left there at 10:15, and I don't know anybody that was going to eat those that night. So when you went to heat them up, you didn't really get what you could have had you baked it the next day and then maybe reheated the sauce and thinned it out a little bit at home. Instead, I will reheated it the next day, and it was still good, don't get me wrong, but that would have been my critique on that, and I did share that with Chef Andre. I'll have a picture of the finished beef Wellington on my Instagram if you're interested, as well as this really cool beater / whisker that is very different looking but very efficient. I bought one just because I was sold on its effectiveness, and also I like the rubber bottom because it doesn't scrape your pans. So take a look at that picture if you're interested as well. Anyway, the class ended. I stayed behind, and I mentioned to Chef that I was going to be reviewing the class for this podcast. I had mentioned it to the owner, but from the look on Chef's face, the owner didn't pass it along. So he agreed to interview with me before I podcasted. And bonus was I introduced Joe to Andre, showed Andre a couple of Joe's plating photos, and he was impressed enough that he was willing to entertain the notion of Joe becoming an intern and assisting him with the classes. So we've since reached out to Chef Ernie, and I'm very close to forging a partnership with Kitchen Fantasy and hoping that if all things are going the way I expect them to, Joe will be interning at some of the classes, and the Living on the Verge podcast will team up with Kitchen Fantasy to make segments a regular part of the podcast, and we will review cooking classes. I really hope we're able to work that out. I'm very excited about it. I think we're going to have a fabulous relationship. I encourage you guys to hit up the Kitchen Fantasy cooking classes. I've been to 4 or 5 and I have not been disappointed. So let's move right on along to part 1 of the reunion of the Beverly Hills Housewives. There's a lot to cover. I was really anticipating this and I wasn't disappointed. I first must say that if you have an option to watch the unedited Peacock version, I highly recommend it. It's kind of cool. It's a little bit longer and we get to hear all the cuss words without the beeps, which is kind of a kick. Anyhow, it opens as usual with them backstage getting ready in glam. Dorit and Bose are together. Bose is excited for the reunion, which totally proves that she's a rookie because we all know you're not supposed to be excited about the reunion. They're never exciting. And then Kyle and Erica are talking about, what they're expecting. And Erica tells Kyle, since she hasn't watched all of the episodes, that she highly encourages her to do so before she goes out and starts to film the reunion. And then Andy visits Dorit and tells her to leave it all out on the stage. So let's talk about the seating chart. First seat, we have Kyle, then Sutton and Garcelle. And on the other side, we have first seat Dorit, then Bose and Erica. We get started with Andy complimenting all the girls as per usual. In my opinion, Garcelle's outfit was by far the most beautiful, and I would definitely wear that if I thought I could pull it off, gloves and all. The next I would have said was Erica, but there was something shady going on there because she did not want to mention the name of the designer when Andy asked, and I found that odd. I was a little surprised by Dorit's choice, given the extreme fashion of last season's reunion. I guess I expected a little bit more, and so for me, her look fell flat. She still looked beautiful. She's a beautiful woman, but that's my opinion. And, the rest of them, neither here nor there. Bose's outfit had a lot of meaning behind it, and you can look up the details on the internet if you're interested in seeing the meaning behind all of the different choices of fabric and all of that sort of stuff. As expected, she shows up in, gorgeous, meaningful fashion that is representative of her culture and thereby shows what a badass bitch Bose is. So to start the reunion, Andy asks if anybody wants to set any intentions, and Kyle says that she hopes to leave there feeling better than when she came. And then Garcelle chimes in and says it's her hope that they will be able to take a reunion photo because they haven't been able to do so the last 2. And spoiler alert, they don't take a reunion photo. Well, they do, but Garcelle's not in it because she walks off the set and quits the show. We all know that's coming, but just so you know, her intention is not realized. So we start to move on and we get started with Dorit's package. And Andy explains the evolution of Dorit, of course, starting with the infamous cigarette and all the memes and so on and so forth. And then we get a little serious and Dorit is asked if she regrets the decision to not tell the kids about the separation. And she doubles down and she says that not for one moment has she regretted it. I hated that answer. I disagree. That's my opinion. But I feel that it is imperative to be as honest with your children as possible. I didn't always get that right with my kids, but I sure as hell tried because it meant more to me that my children trusted me implicitly than for me to not have to do the hard work of telling them something that was difficult, either for me to say or for them to hear. So in my opinion, Dorit is taking the easy way out at the expense of her children. Don't come after me. You're entitled to yours. I'm entitled to mine. Dorit goes on to say that she believes that as long as the children see that she and PK are being civil and are happy, then they will be happy. I strongly disagree, but again, just my opinion. So then Andy asks if she is still in love with PK. And she waits, hesitates, and then says, yes, she is. That PK is her soul, her heart, and her blood. You guys, that was really sad. She is still very much in love with him, and it's pretty apparent that this breakup was not her idea. Andy explains that PK was invited to the reunion, but did not want to attend, and instead sent ahead a statement. Dorit was well aware of the fact that he was invited and didn't want to attend, but definitely looked a little bit stunned when Andy mentioned that he sent a statement. I'll read the statement here. PK says, I was invited to be part of the reunion, but declined because I don't believe engaging with Dorit in this forum would be constructive. Dorit has made several mischaracterizations about me, but the one I must address is the claim that I am a bad father. That statement is both heartbreaking and false. It is deeply hurtful to me and, more importantly, to our children, who, despite Dorit's assertion, will inevitably see and hear all of this at a time not of our choosing. Those closest to us know the truth. Many have wanted to speak out, but I have asked them not to because the truth should never need a champion. I refuse to stoke a fire I did not ignite. The Dorit I married would never have allowed this, much less caused it. That woman embodied kindness, integrity, and grace. I can only hope this version of Dorit finds her way back to the person she once was. Yikes. That is a strong statement, and it can be viewed both ways. I will tell you both ways I see it, and then I'll tell you where I fall, and you can choose your side as well. So one way to look at it is that PK is copping out and doesn't want to show up because he doesn't want to have to face the music and face the answers to questions that he may not want to be asked. And if that seems to be what Dorit maintains, she wishes he would have been there. And the other way to look at it is that he is doing what he needs to do to protect himself and his children in what inevitably is going to be a custody battle that, from the appearance of all things, is imminent. I fall on the side of PK. Although it could be argued that, he's being kind of cowardly, at the end of the day, I'm going to do whatever I have to do to protect my rights to my children. And the last thing I'm going to do is expose myself to a situation that would have recorded evidence that could later be used against me in said custody case. After the statement is read, did anybody notice the look on Kyle's face? It said a lot, you guys. In fact, I think she may have been one of the people PK was referring to as people who wanted to speak out because she looked like she had a lot to say but was biting her tongue. And then Andy asked if Dorit thought that PK was jealous or threatened by the fame that she had acquired. And she didn't really disagree. She didn't, agree, but she thought there might have been a little bit of truth to that. And Kyle interjects and, starts to talk to Dorit about the fact that she thought that calling PK an alcoholic was just too much. And Dorit seems to think that by doing that Kyle diminished her feelings about what she was going through. So Kyle and Dorit kind of get into it, and then it comes down to the fact that Dorit is upset that Kyle sent a text to PK before she sent a text to her to let them both know that Kyle was thinking about them and was there if they needed anything. I think that was childish, and Dorit was, resting on semantics, but what are you going to do? Then things turn kind of serious. Andy asks how long PK has been sober, and Dorit's face freezes. She gets this weird look. They pan to everybody else who's hanging on her every word, and she says nothing. When pressed a little bit, she said PK is not discussing that with her. And so obviously the group, along with Andy, everybody deduces that PK's drinking again. And she doesn't deny it. Andy asks her if she's concerned, and she says that she is concerned and that the situation that she is referring to had just happened a week before they were sitting down to tape. So then Sutton is asked about her comments on Dorit's finances, and Dorit and Sutton kind of get into it with each other about, the fact that Sutton wasn't being compassionate. And then Andy brings up the finances and the fact that the house was in foreclosure. Dorit's quick to point out that in fact it was in pre-foreclosure, and the reason for it was because the rate changed and PK was playing hardball with the bank and wasn't going to pay the mortgage or resolve the matter until such time as the bank called him back. Now, I call bullshit on that, and I don't know what happened, but she ensures us all that it has been resolved and that there is no threat to her house. Then Andy asks if PK, or how often PK sees the children, and her response is once a week on Saturday nights if he's in town. That was really sad. That really broke my heart. If that is true, I don't even know what to say. But then it reminded me that I had recently heard another podcast called Bravo Docket with the attorneys who cover like legal matters in the Bravo world. And they are doing a 2-part show on PK's resume of lawsuits. And it reminded me that he has other children from his first marriage. And in all the years he's been on the show, he's never had the children appear that I'm aware of. And he certainly doesn't speak about them. So, without coming across too judgmental, I'm going to be judgmental. Maybe that's just the way he parents. Okay. Finally, to wrap things up with Dorit, Andy asks, how she's feeling. And she says that she really is just sad and heartbroken because she's finally realizing that what she once thought was going to be her life is not going to be her life after all. And, that is a sad realization for anybody going through divorce. So in that moment, I really felt for Dorit, and her tone of voice as well as her body language made it really apparent that she was being genuine in that moment. So we move on to Bose. Andy said, Bose, you came on strong and, was really made an impression, and nobody could disagree with that. We had her relationship with Keely to uncover, her career, her daughter, and then her desire to have more children. So Andy asked her if she watched before, and she said she did in fact watch before. And she said that she was surprised from watching the show versus being on the show. When she watched, she thought that maybe some of the emotion and the drama was a little blown out of proportion for, dramatic effect. And she was surprised that in fact it wasn't, given the amount of time that these ladies spend together during the season. The level of emotion and drama is real. And that was what she found very surprising. Interestingly enough, she mentioned that she was really disappointed and kind of upset by all of the feedback that she got about her relationship with Keely and her desire to have more children at her age. And, it occurred to me, she said, I find it interesting that everybody feels so strongly about my hopes, my dreams, and my wishes and desires. And you guys, it's true. Like, nobody has the right to shit on somebody else's dreams and hopes and desires. It's just not our place in life. But leave it to social media to, tell you how they're feeling, whether you ask them or not. Bose is asked about her friendship with Dorit, and she simply explains it this way. When I went into the group, I was open. And I think that the reason Dorit and I hit it off is because she happened to be open at that same time. That's how simple she makes it. For some reason, everybody starts to come after Garcelle, and the temperature in the room starts to change. Bose explains that she's upset with comments regarding her being manipulated, and regarding Bose saying that Kyle had not been welcoming. And then Kyle claims that she went to Bose's room, and Bose says she doesn't recall that at all. So somebody here is lying. And honestly, I don't find Bose to be a liar. And Kyle, on the other hand, has been caught in numerous lies over the years. So Kyle seems like she's trying to redeem herself, and then goes on to talk about how she visited Bose when she had had her procedure, and that she thought that she had had a really deep conversation with her. And Bose simply states, your conversations were not memorable. So Kyle kind of laughs that off, even though she looks perturbed. And we move on to Garcelle. So in her package, Garcelle's, we're reminded that she did try to get closer to Kyle. And Erica says they wished that they knew more, and they wished that she would share more of her story. Garcelle's kind of annoyed by this and says, like, what else is there to talk about? I'm sharing everything that I have. So then Erica says, I guess I just wish you were more interesting. Now, Erica, that's kind of a shitty thing to say, and that's exactly what Garcelle says. Erica, I really want to keep loving the new you. Young lady, this is no way to get that to happen. What you said was not nice and uncalled for. And it really did put Garcelle in a whole different place. Then Kyle goes on to interrupt and say that she just doesn't feel that she's showing anything, whereas Kyle has shown everything for 14 seasons. And Garcelle disagrees and says, I don't think you're showing anything either. So, of course, Morgan Wade comes up. And Garcelle says there was stuff going on, and all of a sudden, we can't even say her name. And it's true. Morgan was on the season last year with tattoos and showing up at events. And all of a sudden, we can't even say her name. Well, Kyle maintains that the reason is because Morgan suffered a lot of anxiety from what ensued as a result. And that it was Kyle who signed the contract, not Morgan. And of course, she expected it to be done there. But Garcelle's not going to let it go. And she points out that if all of that is true, then if there's no manipulation, why is it that Kyle came to Garcelle and Sutton off camera asking for nobody to talk about Morgan this season? And Kyle says, I thought you were my friends. That is why. And then she asked Sutton, Garcelle asked Sutton, what did you say when Kyle told us that? Sutton tries to lie, but Garcelle's not having any of it. And she says, no, you didn't. What you said when she walked away was, that was a chess move. Kyle is really upset to hear this and calls them both mean girls. And then Garcelle brings up the Chuck E. Cheese conversation and says, that's not true. We were laughing about it. And, then you went on the after show and called me an asshole. And Garcelle maintains that they, in fact, did squash it. But Kyle says it was only said to embarrass her. And Kyle points out that Garcelle said Sutton didn't have her back. And here's another opportunity for Sutton to have Garcelle's back. And instead, she turns to Kyle and says, I respected your request all season. What the actual fuck, Sutton? Jeez Louise, I don't understand what it is. I don't understand why you have to be so far up her ass. Like, it's really disappointing. So I could understand why Garcelle was upset in that moment. In my opinion, Kyle cannot be objective. And I genuinely think that Garcelle was just trying to impress upon Kyle how highly Sutton thinks of her. And that Garcelle was basically just saying, listen, in this moment, I think she needs you to drive the point home. In any event, that's not the way it came out. And as per usual, Andy, does his infamous let's move along. So Garcelle's apologizing, and every time she apologizes, her demeanor seems to be changing a little bit more. And Andy, the shit stirrer that he is, asks Dorit about the break-in comment. and Dorit is instantly activated and goes off on Kyle. You would think Garcelle was going to apologize. No, she doesn't back down. She says, eventually, I'm sorry if what I said hurt you, but this is how I feel. So Bose is pissed and she chimes in and says it was a terrible, terrible, terrible thing to say. Garcelle apologizes again. I'm not sure I believe her apology is genuine. And they break for lunch. Do you remember they kept showing in the preview where Garcelle storms off and tells everybody to fuck themselves? Well, that comment was actually said to her assistants, her makeup and glam people, in reference to everyone coming after her in the dressing room, not the way it was cut to look like she had said that to everybody in the room. But in fact, it is going to continue to heat up. We still have 2 episodes left, and we know that we will catch up with Kathy Hilton and Jennifer Tilly next week. I'm hoping it'll continue to be this interesting. Listen, in my opinion, episode 1 of the reunion was better than all of the episodes throughout the season combined. That's it for this episode, guys. I hope you'll join me again next week as I bring you White Lotus in Atlanta. As we wrap up Beverly Hills, I'll be looking to cover something else. I'm thinking Valley's going to be starting soon, so we'll probably take that on. But if you guys have any strong opinions one way or the other, please feel free to chime in the comments. Thanks for spending this time with me. Have a great day. Thank you for listening to another episode of the Living on the Verge podcast. If you like what you've heard, I'd love 5 stars, and don't forget to subscribe. If you have any hot tea or blind items, I promise you can stay anonymous if you like, or if you want your name mentioned, I can do that too. Just email us at livingonthevergepodcast@gmail.com, or you can reach us on Instagram at Living on the Verge Podcast. So again, thank you. Come back again and join me for the next episode and see what I can get myself into, and we can all be living on the verge together. Have a nice day.